We're coming live to you from outside the provincial headquarters of the South African Police Service, and as Arabilia has been describing it, the turf of Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi, the Provincial Police Commissioner of the province here in KwaZulu-Natal. And of course, this is following that explosive press briefing that happened on Sunday. And now this coming Sunday, we expect the President to make an announcement following meetings that he would have had with the various stakeholders around the allegations that have been leveled against the senior members of his cabinet, and Senzo Mchunu being one of that, the police minister. And then you also have the allegations against senior members of the South African Police Service. Let's now bring in Aubrey Matshiqi, political analyst, to speak to us about what is unfolding. And as we have been emphasizing that although the National Police Commissioner has said that this is unprecedented times, it's not the first time that the country finds itself in a situation where very senior members of the police are implicated or accused of being involved in corruption. You'd remember Begekele, when he was the police commissioner, he was also, according to the finding of the public protector, unlawful conduct that the public protector had found in the leasing of the headquarters of the South African Police Service here in KwaZulu-Natal, as well as the headquarters in Pretoria. And of course, after the Board of Inquiry, those findings were overturned by the High Court. You also have the likes of Jackie Celebi, who was linked to the underworld, and he was also convicted on some of the charges that had been brought against him. And at that time, you may remember that Thabo Mbeki was the president of the country, also questioned the conduct of the NPA around the prosecution of Jackie Celebi. But let's bring in Gogo Aubrey Matshiqi now to have this conversation. Gogo, very good morning to you. Thank you so much for making time for us. What are some of your takeaways around what has unfolded over this period? The president was in Brazil, of course, when this press briefing took place. And now this Sunday, we expect an announcement from him about what's going to happen going forward.
How I look at all of this is in terms of the relationship between rogue police officers or officials, rogue elements in our intelligence services, in this case particularly crime intelligence, and rogue elements in our political class, in other words, corrupt politicians. Now, of course, we're talking here about the relationship between politics and organized crime. And if we stay on this path, we may find ourselves in a situation where criminal syndicates have so much power over the political class and over the criminal justice system that one day they are represented in our National Assembly, they are represented in our legislatures and municipal councils. Remember, criminal syndicates have two things to achieve. Firstly, they must make sure that they win the largest portion of what I call the criminal or crime market share. And secondly, they must make sure that they have political cover or protection. Hence, what we are seeing now in terms of the allegation that there seems to be some collusion between elements in crime intelligence, elements in the political class, and of course, criminal syndicates. So the link between corruption in the political class and organized crime seemingly is what we're dealing with here.
Yeah, Diane Kola-Barnard, who is a member of the Joint Standing Committee on Intelligence, yesterday being interviewed by my colleague Nasipi Same after the Democratic Alliance had also opened a case against the Senzo Mchunu, as well as Shadrack Sibia, the Deputy Police Commissioner, head of detectives. And something interesting that she mentioned at the beginning of that interview, where she essentially argues that you can't divorce politics from what is currently playing out. And just take a listen to what she had to say.
Well, I think if one looks back at the removal of the top structure of crime intelligence, all 7 of them arrested and out on bail, I mean, that's an extraordinary move. I don't think in all my years in Parliament serving on police and also on intelligence now. I've never seen the like. So there is some sort of political will to start cleaning things up. There are criminal charges there. The issue about the buildings is still coming up. I mean, one of them had been arrested the week before. That's a whole nother issue with him somehow losing his official firearm and cell phone and laptop to a lady of ill repute, shall we say, politely. So those are all issues going on. But of course, everything factors in to political shenanigans, and we know what happens on the run-up to the election of a new president. There's jostling of power. So one cannot take the word of any single individual in this body, any one of them. It's interesting that things are coming out. It may be very convenient that they came out when they did. We don't know. That's why there have to be major investigations.
That's the point, the jostling for power, especially as we head up to the elective conference of the ANC, which takes place in 2027. For Diane Colabarnat, at least, this is something that ordinarily happens once the president's term comes to an end. This is now the ANC's president's term comes to an end. What's your takeaway from this? But also at the same time, we're not saying that, listen, you mustn't devoid this of the allegations that have also been made, that the allegations still remain there, but the allegations also come during a time as the ANC builds up to that elective conference.
Well, there is another way in which you can analyze this. It is in terms of what I call the relationship between the deep state and the deep establishment. Let me start with the deep state. The deep state comes into being when senior government officials, politicians, rogue elements in intelligence, private and public, criminal syndicates work together in pursuit of a common economic or business goal. In other words, they work together in order to amass a mountain of money. The deep establishment, on the other hand, consists of both private citizens and political actors. By private citizens, I will also include, for instance, what I call banksterism. Bankers or the banking system acting as gangsters. Hence, I call it banksterism. Remember that what we call state capture would not have happened without the assistance of accountants and lawyers, and also the participation of bankers. Banksterism is a very important element of what I'm talking about. So at the level of what I call the deep establishment, you will have banksters, politicians, and other private citizens working together to influence the direction the country takes in policy, economic, and other terms. When you have an interface between the deep establishment and the deep state, as I have described, you then have the situation as described by General Mkhwanazi, where organized crime tries to take over our politics by making sure that criminal syndicates have political cover from the political class. And therefore, what Diane Colabarnat is describing is part of the interface between the deep state and the deep establishment. Why we must make sure we don't stay on this path. If we're not careful, we are going to find ourselves in a situation where America found itself, with J. Edgar Hoover, who was the head of the FBI, becoming the most influential, most feared person in America. In fact, American presidents feared J. Edgar Hoover because he had a lot of power. So if we're not careful, within our security establishment, may emerge a single individual as powerful as J. Edgar Hoover, or may emerge a group of individuals as powerful as J. Edgar Hoover, who are feared by the political class in its entirety, including the head of state and others.
Speaking about the head of state, on Sunday at 7 p.m., he is set to make an announcement around the decision around what's going to happen now going forward, especially considering that you have a member of his executive being implicated. But that member of the executive was once on his slate. The 2017 ANC's elective conference, Senzo Mchunu, was on the slate of Cyril Ramaphosa, but he lost out to Ace Magashule by 24 votes, which was also disputed. So I think a lot of people are going to look at this and ask themselves, how is the president going to act against somebody who has been on his political slate and somebody who has a strong constituency within the ANC, as the Integrity Committee of the ANC will also be investigating this?
That, Aldrin, is a very important question, because one of the questions people keep on asking is this: why did General Mkhwanazi deal with the matter in the manner that he did on Sunday, by calling a media briefing, instead of sharing what he knows with people inside the security establishment, including, by the way, sharing the information with the minister and the president? Could it be that for whatever reason, General Mkhwanazi felt he could not trust both the minister and the president? Or could it be that he felt the safest way to proceed is to exclude the president and the minister from what he wanted to do or he wants to do? So that is a very important question. But what I think is the option, or one of the options facing the president, is that he must make sure that there is no doubt that he sees above all of this. And secondly, by so doing, make sure that none of the parties involved in this imbroglio are part of the investigations that must happen. What I would propose is that the president sets up a special investigative unit. And I'm not saying the special investigative unit. I say a special investigative unit. By that I mean, what the president must do must to ask, what does an effective investigation look like? What kind of skills and expertise will be needed, will be required to investigate this matter? And therefore, set up a special investigative unit that has all the required skills and expertise to do or effect an effective investigation. That is one of the things I would propose.
Yeah, and what about the powers of that special investigating unit, also considering that these allegations touches on every sphere of a government, including the three arms of the state, the executive, the judiciary, as well as the legislature?
Well, in its composition, it must have people with expertise in intelligence, in crime intelligence, in investigating organized crime, and so on. In other words, it must be a multidisciplinary task force that he must set up, which has all the expertise and the skills that are required to conduct an effective investigation. What I would not want to see is a commission of inquiry. In my view, commissions of inquiry are useless. And the most recent example is the Zondo Commission of Inquiry. I have no confidence when it comes to commissions of inquiry, because first of all, the political class does not set up a commission of inquiry unless it does so with a predetermined outcome in mind. And the allocation of resources to such a commission of inquiry, the amount of time given to that commission of inquiry, the terms of reference of that commission of inquiry will therefore be structured in such a way that they are in line with that predetermined outcome. So for me, commissions of inquiry are useless. Therefore, I would not want to see a commission of inquiry.
Okay, thank you so much for your time, Koko. Aubrey Matshiqi there on what his expectations are. I wonder what your expectations are ahead of President Cyril Ramaphosa's announcement at 7 o'clock on Sunday. Thank you so much for making time for us. We're going to take a quick ad break and we continue with the AM report. Rachel Makura has the last take on sports stories this morning.